So we're now on Daf Lamed Beis, Amid Beis, and we're going to start the Gemara. And the Gemara wants to go through the source for all these mitzvahs that are mentioned at the beginning of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah permits those recitations in any language. Parsha Sotah Minolan, Dichsivi Amara Kohen Lisha, B'chol Lashon Shehu Omer. In other words, here the Torah doesn't say v'onsa. The Torah says ishbi osa kohen, v'omar el ha'isha. And amira is a word that indicates any language. Tana Rabbanu, we learned in the Brayso, mashmiin osa b'chol lashon shishomas. When the kohen is mashpia her for the hashkah of my memorim, he can do so in any language. Al mahi shosa. He has to make sure that she understands what was the action that she did, namely stira, that caused her to drink the mayim. What else does she have to know? Ubameh hi shosa. And she should know about the kli, right? The kli where they put the water and the afar, and they obliterated the name of Hashem. Alman nitmes, and then we have to know what actions brought her to the state of Tumah, which has to do with Kalas Rosh, as we'll see later. Ubamehi nitmes. And how will the Mayim Amorim clarify and prove that she was guilty as accused? Now, in the past, we've discussed the fact that this entire process of Hashkas Sotah is public. The women are there, and maybe even the men are there. And it's very important that the Kohen explain all these things, because otherwise it's not going to have the impact on the people. So now the Gemara goes through each one of these four parts of the Brisa. First, Almai Shosa, and the Gemara explains that means Al Iske Kini Ustira. Right? This was her priestess that after the Baal gave her kinu, she violated that kinu with stira. Next, we have Ubamehi Shosa, this is number 2. B'mekida Shel Cheres. Right? They used a lousy, so to speak, low-grade kind of a receptacle, and this is a mida keneged mida because she served a drink to the boel with some beautiful, glass vessels, and therefore we're going to be mashka with the lowest level of a vessel, which is a kli cheres, alman nitmes. And what brought her to eventually have this adulterous relation? Well, in this case, schok v'yaldus. So schok, we understand, that's called kalas rosh. And next we have yaldus. Yaldus means that she allowed herself to be seduced like a yalda. Ubamehi nitmes. And under what circumstances will the water have the effective power to be bodeka? B'shogeg o b'mezid, b'ones o b'rotzon. So it means that it's going to become clear that in the case of shogeg, the mayim are not bodek, only in the case of mezid. In the case of ones, the mayim are not bodek, only in the case of rotzon. But kol kach lama, why do we have to teach all these halachas and all these distinctions between shogeg and mezid and ones and ratzon? Shalol hotzi laz al mayim amorim. People are going to say that, guess what? The mayim amorim does not really have any true impact. It's not effective. Why? Because let's say she had this relationship with Shogeg or Bionis, and the mayim are not bodek, so people are going to say, you know what? Even if she had done it b'mezid, it wouldn't be bodek. So we notify them up front, listen and understand that if she was guilty only b'shogeg or she was a rape victim, but honest, then the mayim are ineffective. So the fact that she didn't die, that's indicative of the fact that it was b'shogeg or bonus. But don't be motzi las. Vidui maser. How do we know that vidui maser can be recited in any language? We know one. Dichsiv, again, the word v'amarta, not v'anisa, but v'amarta. V'amarta l'fnei Hashem Elokecha v'yarti HaKodesh min habayis. V'yolef amira misota. We said already that amira in Sotah, we saw already the breakthrough that the hashpas ha-Sotah is b'chol lashon. B'lashon shu omer. Amalei Rav Zvid Abaye. Why does the Tana derive vidui maser from Sotah to be marba kol lashon? V'leilef amira. Why not learn a gzera shava from brachos uklalos, and then we come to the exact opposite conclusion? So Rav Zvid is raising the possibility that amira and that amira in the parsha vidui maser should be linked up with amira in the Levium as they recited the brachos uklalos, because what does the pasuk say over there? We only read part of the pasuk. We said v'anu al Levium, and we emphasized the word aniyah. But then afterwards it says v'amru. So we do have amira in brachos uklalos, and therefore ma'alahala b'lashon hakodesh, the Levium were dafkin lashon kodesh afkan b'lashon hakodesh. So we should come to the conclusion that vidui maser is dafka b'lashon hakodesh. Not sure why the Gemara didn't ask this question on Sotah. Second. I'm missing a piece of the puzzle here. Right, in Sotah it says v'yomer hakohen lo isha. I think I understand. Let's go back a little for a second to Parshas Sotah Minolan. Tichsiv Yomar HaKohen L'Isha. In the Parsha of the Shavuos Sotah, it says V'Yomar HaKohen L'Isha. So I thought that we were deriving it from the word V'Yomar. But that's not true. We're deriving it from a Yitura Dekra, from an extra pasuk. Why? Because in Noso, in Parshas Noso Bamidbar Hey, we have two psukim, pasuk Yites and pasuk Chaf Aleph. Pasuk Yites says V'Shbia Osa Kohen V'Yomar Lo Isha, and just three psukim later in pasuk Chaf Aleph it says V'Yomar Kohen Lo Isha. So we have a double language, and from the double language we derive B'chol Lashon. However, in the case of vidui maser, we don't have the double language, we just have the word amira. And now the question is, do we take the word amira in vidui maser and compare it to the amira of the Kohen in Sotah, or should we take the word amira in vidui maser and compare it to the amira in brachos uklalos? And the Gemara answers, this is Abai responding to Rav Zvid, Don in amira great dasa me amira great dasa. We ain't done in amira great dasa me ania the amira. So in the case of vidui maser, we only have the word v'yamarta, and v'yamarta is going to let me compare vidui maser to Sotah, where it says v'yamar. But we're not going to derive vidui maser, where it says amira, from brachos uklolos, because in the case of brachos uklolos, in addition to amira, it says aniya, v'anu alaviyim v'yomru. And therefore, we assume that in brachos uklolos, it was in Lashon Kodesh. Tanya, we learned to the Bryce Reb Shimon ben Yochai Omer Adam Omer Shvacha b'kol namuch ugnusa b'kol ram. When a person says good things about himself, like in the case of Vidui Maser, he should do it in a humble and low voice. But if he's admitting his sin, he should do it out loud. And where do I see this? From whence does Reb Shimon ben Yochai derive these conclusions? Shvacha b'kol namuch min Vidui Maser. Right, when a person recites Vidui Maser and Asisi Kachal Asher Tzivisani, then he should recite it in a kol namuch. And how do we know this? Because the word aniyah, which indicates responsive reading, aniyah indicates baharomas kol, when you raise your voice. But in the case of Vidui Maser, the pasuk omits the word aniyah, and all we have is an amira. And amira is b'kol namuch. Yunuso b'kol ram. How do we know that when a person is castigating himself, so to speak, he raises his voice? Mikra bikurim. Now, mikra bikurim opens with the following three words: Arami, Oved, Avi. And who is the Arami? And he's called Avi. That's none other than Lavan Harami, the father of Rachel and Leah, basically our grandfather. So on the one hand, we don't relate to Lavan Chas Shalom as our grandfather, but biologically he is our grandfather. He's the father of Rachel and Leah. And he was a terrible guy. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, Bikesh Lakar Sakol. So in Mikra Bikurim, where we open up with the indication that Arami tried to destroy my father, meaning Yaakov, that is B'kol Ram. That is with Haromas Kol. So the Gemara now objects. Nuso B'kol Ram, V'omer Rab Yochanan Mishum Rab Shimon bar Yochai M'nei Ma Tiknu Tefillah B'lachash Kadesh Lo Levayis Over Avera. Many people will recite Vidui within the framework of Tefillah, and Rabbi Yochanan Rab Shimon bar Yochai says that we have to recite Tefillah B'lachat, not to embarrass those who are reciting Vidui in the context of the Tefillah. Sharei lo chilek hakasu mako ben chatos liol. What's the source for the fact that we want to cover up some, the sins of somebody, so not to publicly humiliate him? It's from chatos and olah, because chatos and olah are brought in the Tzafon HaZara. That's where they do the Shechita. And what that means is, again, we're going to see if we can identify the difference between Chatas and Olah by the animal. But in terms of the location, Chatas is for a person who violated a Chiyuv Kares, whereas an Olah is Bab and Nedava. And they're both Shechted Tzon and Nedava, Tzon HaZara. And why did the Torah designate a certain specific part of the Azar for the Shechita of a Korban Chatos? Because the person will be embarrassed by the fact that everybody knows he's bringing a Korban Chatos for having violated an Isur Kares. So the Torah wants to cover up so as not to humiliate the Over Avera. And that's exactly opposite of what Rav Shimon bar Yochai said in the Brisa with regard to Arami Ovid Avi, that he should recite it B'kol Ram. So Gemara answers, Lo tema gnusol and ema tsa'aro. The Brisa should not read Omer Adam Gnuso B'kol Ram, but rather Omer Adam Tsaro B'kol Ram. When a person never suffers a tsar, then he wants others to pray on his behalf, so he should announce his tsar in a loud voice, so that others can hear him and be mevakesh olav rachan. And the proof of that is from Vidui Maser. Because in Vidui Maser, he mentions all the tzaros, sha'over al Am Yisrael, like the tzar of Lavan and the tzar of Sheba Mitzrayim. Now, again, this is not really says what kind of tsar do we have from Lovan Arami or Mitzrayim? But I guess we're talking about Lispalif Hashem b'kol ram kadeshi yivakshu harbe rachamin shelo yavod tzoros ka'ela, like these tzoros. Kirisanya, as we learned in Parshas Mitzorah, it says Vayikra Yigimel v'Tomi Tomi Yikra. He should call out and cry out that he's Tomei. Tzorch lo dia tsaro l'rabin. He notifies publicly the people that he is suffering from tzaras, and therefore Rabin Vakshem Olav Rachman, so that the masses of people will pray on his behalf. Gufa Amar Yochanan Mishum Rab Shimon Achai B'nei Ma Tiknu Tefila V'Lachash Shlo Levayish Es Over Avera Shreilo Chilek HaKosav Mokom Bechatas V'Yola. And the Gemara wants to know: is it really possible that the people don't realize that he's bringing a korban chatas? They're going to confuse it with an ola v'lova ika damim, right? There's a chut hasikra that splits the mizbeach into two. And with regard to the Zrikas Adam, the matan domim on the Mizbeach, Adam Chatos is Lamalas on the top half of the Mizbeach, where the Dam Ola is Lamata is on the bottom half. So how could the onlooker not realize that he's bringing a Korban Chatos? And the Gemara says, Hasam Hudiyada. Kohen Hudiyada. The Kohen who does the Zrika. Now, it's the people who are watching this whole process. They don't know exactly where he did the Zrika Saddam. Was it above the Chut HaSaira HaSikra, below it? They don't know that. But with regard to Shchita, which is in the Azara, and that's public in nature, then the Chote would be Misbayesh if everybody realized that he's bringing Korban Chatas. And therefore the Torah established that the Korban Ola and the Korban Chatas would both be shechted in the same place. Hey, wait a minute. Everybody's going to know the difference between these two animals because a chatas is from a nekeva, a kivsa or a seira. As it says in Vayikra Dalet, Vehevi korbanos seiras izim tmima nekeva al chatosa shachatu. Vim keves, yavi korbanol chatos nekeva tmima yivien. Whereas in the case of a korban olah, it's got to be from a zachar. And this is in Vayikra, at the very beginning of Vayikra, it says, in olah korbanom min abakar zachar tamim yakrivenu. So how could you possibly cover up for this chote who's bringing a korban chatas? He's bringing it from an akeva, se'iri or kivsa. Everybody knows that. So Gemara says, there's a tail in the back of the animal that covers up its private parts, and therefore the animal cannot be determined by the onlooker to be either a keves or a kivsa. Penach kavsa, okay, that works out for the keves, but se'ira Michael right? A se'ira nekeva is different. She doesn't have that aliyah. And therefore, they're going to all know that she's a se'ira nekeva, not a zachar, and they'll therefore conclude that he's a chote and he's bringing a korban chatas. And the Gemara says, "Hasam iu dekam michsaf nafshe di boile lesuye kavsa v'lokom." If he wants to cover up for himself, he has the option of bringing a kavsa. Who told him to bring a se'ira? So that embarrassment he brought upon himself. The Gemara asks, "Chatos." How about the case of a person who violates avodah zarah b'shogeg, and for his kapara, he can only bring a se'ira nekeva? Everybody's going to know. There we want his public humiliation in order to generate a kapara. because he violated such a serious avera, the worst of them all, avodah zarah. And in this case, the Torah is in favor of embarrassing him for that avon gadol in order that he achieve kapara, so that busha is a mechaper. Kriya Shema can be read in any language. Minolan Dichsiv Shema Yisrael v'chol lashon she'ata shomea. The Torah should have said Shimu Yisrael. What is Shema Yisrael? In a lashon yachid, it should have been a lashon rabim, addressing all of Klal Yisrael. But the answer is that you can recite this parasha in any language that you hear, meaning any language that you understand. Tana Rabbana, now we're going to learn a brisa that records a machlokes between Rebbe and the Chacham. Kriya Shema Kiksava Divrei Rebbe. Rebbe requires that we recite Kriya Shema in Lashon Kodesh. Chacham b'chol Lashon. Like time of the Rebbe. Omar Kra, the pasuk says in the parasha of Shema, V'hayu hadvar me'ela she'anochim savchela. And what's V'hayu? Behavayasan you. You have to read Kriya Shema the way it was given at Matan Torah, Lashon Kodesh, Behavayasan. Rabbanan, they hold that Kriya Shema can be recited in any language. It's Omar Kra Shema b'chol lashon she'ata shomea. So now Rabbanan have sort of, in a sense, avoided the main issue here. What about the word v'hayu? V'havayasan you. Rabbanan nami oksiv v'hayu. V'hayu means that you have to do it in a very specific way and fulfill certain legal requirements. And that is that you have to read it kiseder shenitna b'sinai, not to be makdim and read a later pasuk before an earlier pasuk. Now the Gemara asks the flip side. For Rebbe, shelo yikrenu mafrei minole. If Rebbe uses the Vahayu to teach us that you have to recite Kriya Shema Lashon Kodesh, he doesn't have Vahayu free to derive the psul of Lemafreya. Nafkalei midvarim hadvarim, the extra hay of hadvarim. Pasuk could have said Vahayu dvarim, Vahayu hadvarim, to tell you that it's got to be read in a certain specific seder, not out of order, out of sequence. For Rabbanan, they don't darshan shelo yikrenu lemafreya from dvarim hadvarim, because dvarim hadvarim lo mashmalahu. They don't have a drasha from an extra hay. But Rebbe nami aksiv shema, and shema means in any language. It's not enough to think about Kriyat Shema, but you have to recite it out loud. For Rabbanan, they don't derive from the pasuk Shema that it has to be read out loud. How then do they know this? Allah? Because they use Shema for the other languages. Rabbanan hold that you could be yotzei b'di'evet at least, even if you couldn't hear the words that you enunciated. Lema kasava Rebbe. Here we turn to Daf Lamed Gimel. Kol haTorah b'chol lashon nimra. That all the kriyos that we read in the Beis HaKnesses with a Sefer Torah can be read in any language. Doesn't have to be read b'lashon kodesh. These hakadak lashon kodesh nemra is v'hayu d'kosva v'lamed. If the general rule is that we have to read every parsha in the Torah in lashon kodesh, the way it's written in the Torah, and he cannot fulfill his obligation in other languages, then what's v'hayu? Why do we need the pasuk v'hayu? Why not just compare Shema Yisrael, Kriya Shema, to all the kriyos in the Torah, all of which can be read or should be read b'lashon kodesh? And the answer is that all the kriyas can be read in any language, and therefore v'hayu is teaching me that Kriya Shema is the exception to the rule, and it has to be read b'lashon kodesh. And the Gemara rejects this. Itzrich. Even if I hold that Kol Torah Kula B'Lashon HaKodesh, then I still need a pasuk for Shema v'Hayu Mishum D'Ksiv Shema. And again, even though Rebbe interprets Shema in a different way, not to include any language, but Rebbe derived from the word Shema the Tzorch Lashmiel Liaznov, but nevertheless, you could have had a havmina like the Chachamim, that Shema is teaching me B'chol Lashon, and therefore to counter that, I need the word V'Hayu. So we're up to Lema, and that, in Yirtzeh Hashem, we will pick up tomorrow here on Daf Lamed Gimel. So I wish you a great day.